time will be real time.
Would you please welcome the former Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. How are you today, Mr. Prime Minister?
I'm fine.
Is that what I should refer to you as? Because I know you've had many jobs in the Israeli government, foreign minister and prime minister and finance minister, UN ambassador.
Now, Bill, you want to start with a quarrel? You want to call me prime minister? I'm not going to argue with you.
No, and and I know when Israeli politicians come to the United States, it usually means they're trying to get their old job back.
No, actually, it doesn't, because America is of interest to us, whether in opposition or in government. America is important for everyone.
But you do want your old job back.
Yes, I do.
Well, that's the kind of honesty we don't have here in America from our politicians. But this is not over between you and Hezbollah. This is just halftime.
It's not between us and Hezbollah.
It's not between you and Hezbollah?
No.
Who is it between?
Us and Iran, you and Iran,
right.
The rest of the world and Iran. Hezbollah doesn't exist.
Okay.
People are clapping for Iran?
No, they're clapping that they think you got it right.
Well, I'm glad, because...
They, and I do too.
Well, Bill, I want to clarify what I mean by that. I think it's important. Look, Hezbollah I'm quite sure, kidnapped these three soldiers without getting clearance from their masters in Tehran. But once the fighting got going, they were essentially a forward unit of the Iranian army. They were trained by the Iranian army on Iranian soil, using Iranian weapons, using Iranian tactics, and their long-range weapons are controlled by Iranian officers. So this is a forward unit of the Iranian army, and therefore when we talk about Hezbollah, we're really asking, what does Iran want? It wanted a diversion from its nuclear weapons program, and it got it. But right now, I think it wants quiet, because it wants to somehow pursue the completion of its plan to build atomic bombs, from which they intend to bomb us out of existence, but bomb many people and annihilate.
But they would never bomb you, would they? Because they know that you would hit them back. I've never understood why Israel is so coy about nuclear weapons. I mean, I know you have them. You know you have them. I think most countries that have nuclear weapons, probably they were built by Jewish scientists or the Chinese kid. But it's unrealistic to think that Israel doesn't have nuclear weapons or would not use them for its survival. So why be cagey about it?
Well, I think that, let's suppose for a second, I'm going to avoid answering this question, okay? Here, I'm being openly evasive.
Okay.
So now having dispatched with that, let me address the other side of the equation of your question. Iran, you think, ought to perform or ought to act the way the Soviet Union acted. The Soviet Union had nuclear weapons, the U.S. had nuclear weapons, and so there was a standoff, and in fact a nuclear peace established, right?
Yes.
Now, so you'd think, well, wouldn't Iran behave like the Soviet Union? Except that the Soviet Union and the Soviet communists in general always put their survival before their ideology, before their zealotry. You cannot rely on militant Islam, a militant Islamic regime like Iran to behave the same way. For example, you remember any Soviet suicide bombers? No. But militant Islam produces hordes of them, and they smash into buildings in New York, and bringing down towers, smashing into the Pentagon. Now you had some people who are willing to blow themselves up, blow their children up, to bring down aircraft. This is a pathological creed, and it may be that the current leadership of Iran, which is a mad purist, Islamic fantasist, that would say, well, you know, we can get to heaven in a mad apocalyptic apocalypse where millions die on both sides. A disappeared imam, a religious holy man from about 1,000 years ago, would reappear. Millions would die on both sides, but the millions, the Islamic millions, would go to a Islamic heaven with all the trimmings. And you know, that's not a bad heaven for them. So you think this is crazy. People can't really think that way. People can't re-engage in religious wars. That disappeared 300 years ago from mankind, or did it? Well, you have these people smashing into the World Trade Center. You have these incredible things happening because these people really mean it. And you cannot have these madmen acquiring atomic bombs, because all the nuclear powers that you mentioned up to now have a control over the button. They are not mad. They understand the limits of the use of this weapon. That is not true of Iran. That's why it should not be allowed to develop nuclear weapons.
Okay. And I would agree with you that the people in Iran and many other Muslim countries are much too comfortable with the idea of the world coming to an end, but so are some of Israel's greatest supporters. Does it not make you a bit uncomfortable that the Christian right here in America, which backs Israel fervently, really does so because they think Jesus is going to return? Many of them believe he will do so in their lifetime. And when Jesus returns, he must return to whence he came. And what he's going to do when he gets there, basically, is convert all the Jews or kill them.
Well, you know, let's argue about that point when it happens, right? But I think that there's a huge difference, no matter what people believe in. The question is, what do you do about those beliefs? And it is not true, and there is not a parallelism between Christian evangelicals and Muslim militants. And I'll tell you what the difference is. Number one, the Christian evangelicals do not believe that they have to annihilate entire nations and initiate wars and bomb people into smithereens. They do not. They believe whatever they believe, but they do not believe this. And many of them are firmly committed to democracy. I think most of them, if not all of them. The second point is that they're basically sane people, and they're very careful. You can argue with this or that element of a person's belief, but in the case of militant Islam, you have something that deviates from Islam, that deviates from modernity, that deviates from anything that we've had in the post-Enlightenment period. They really don't accept the modern world. They don't accept choice. They don't accept free information. They don't accept women having the freedoms. They don't accept your children having the freedom to decide what it is they listen, hear, and do. And that is a very unforgiving and dangerous creed. We've never had this mad ideology armed with nuclear weapons. People always refer to Hitler, and in some sense there is a parallel. But in another sense there isn't, because Hitler entered a world conflict and then went to produce nuclear weapons. The great luck for us that he did that. Ahmadinejad is going about it the other way around. He's first creating the nuclear arsenal, and then he'll march onto the world stage and the world conflict. So far, he's just using proxies like Hezbollah. So we have to understand how dangerous this is. You do not want a latter-day Hitler with nuclear weapons. You really must stop that.
No, and it's always...
And the world got used to the idea that the Jew is a victim. Now, when we refuse to be a victim, after the latest and greatest pogrom, the Holocaust, took place, we reestablished our state, raised an army to defend ourselves. Now we are on the world scene, and we have to fight these terrorists, and we have to decide what to do when they rocket us from civilian neighborhoods, and we take action, and occasionally, unintentionally, of course, civilians get killed. Now we've deviated from that perfection of powerlessness into power. And I think there's a real historical adjustment that is yet to take place in the perception of a large portion of mankind towards the Jews. Well, we refuse to be victims, and we're not going to be annihilated again, and we will defend ourselves with the same moral code that any democratic and normal society would apply to itself. We're just not going back into those gas chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I hope you rejoin us when you are the Prime Minister again. Thank you. Benjamin Netanyahu.